cellular provider MTN was another company that released numbers this morning. My colleague Dumisho Greater sat down with the firm's CEO Sifiso Dabengwa to take a look at those results. Let's take a look at that conversation.
Look, I think the first thing is to say, yes, spectrum is going to be important, and it's something that we are working on right now. At this stage, the issue about how telecom is going to solve that problem for us is not on the agenda. We are still very much dependent on being able to acquire additional spectrum from the regulator.
Okay, so those conversations are still going to be ongoing?
With the regulator, that's correct.
Okay. Let's now look at the South African market and the consumer and what you've been able to do here. You did come under pressure in terms of the termination rates, but you are still wanting to push the subscriber. You are still going to be putting money in terms of your capital expenditure. What are some of the key things that will help steer MTN in the right direction?
Look, we believe that there is still opportunities for growth in the South African market, and we are confident that increasing our investments to the level that we are looking at this year, which is about 10 billion rands, is the right decision to make. We believe that whilst the consumer may be challenged as a direct result of the overall economy, getting things into the markets that are attractive and that the consumer sees value in will be the key and most important thing for us to do.
10 billion, how much of that is this just earmarked for South Africa? We're talking about the African continent. How much are we talking outside of South African borders?
Outside of South Africa, it's a balance of about 15 to 20 billion.
So whilst we are with outside South Africa's borders, we do have to talk about MTN in Nigeria. We've seen a double whammy there. We had the Naira and also the fall in the oil price. What's the outlook there? You did mention in the SENS announcements that you are still looking at economic headwinds for the remainder of this year or for the 2015 period.
Look, in the short term, we really haven't seen anything, but in the medium term, we expect that the drop in oil prices will impact. The Nigerian economy is very dependent on oil, so we do expect that there will be an impact. At this stage, it's very difficult to say what the impact will be because we're not too sure what the pricing implications for the consumer will be. In other words, will there be a reduction in the petrol price at the tanks for the consumer? So we will have a much clearer idea during the course of the year, but we do expect there will be some impact in one form or another.
What strategies are you employing in that particular region to still keep a foothold or to still be competitive?
Look, it's important for us that we manage our cost structures well. We've always made it an important part of our strategies to have the best cost structures in the market and then to remain competitive and relevant with respect to the offers that we put into the market.
Some of the transactions that you've taken part in during the course of the year has meant selling of towers and leasing some, Nigeria being one particular one. What other strategies are you going to be putting in place? Is this something that is not complete? Tell us the thinking behind that.
No, we are continuing with that strategy. We have been of the view that selling and leasing back our infrastructure is an optimum way of returning cash, is part of an optimum way of returning cash to shareholders. Whilst we do sell our infrastructure, we still do maintain a shareholding in the tower companies in the major operations. That we will continue doing across our businesses.
I know that Nigeria is a big player for you, but you're also looking at sanctions that are being imposed on Sudan, on Syria by the EU and the US. How's that planning out, and just how significant are those particular operations?
Iran is obviously very important. Sudan is also important. Syria is on a much smaller scale. I mean, at the end of the day, the key issue for us is to ensure that we are working well within the rules as far as sanctions are concerned. Yes, we have challenges in Iran from a point of view of repatriating our dividends, but we are working with the authorities to find a solution. The key issues with Iran, with Sudan and Syria have been the depreciation of their currencies, that has had an implication in terms of the overall financial position of our businesses. But they are small in the bigger scheme of things. But we firmly believe that in all these countries, there will be solutions sooner or later, and then they will return to some form of normality.
Your dividend policy, you said you will continue to have a progressive dividend policy going forward. Are you going to be able to sustain that, given the fact that you are always faced with these economic headwinds? You are pressed to make sure that you are still able to give a competitive service or product?
Well, clearly that is our intention. I mean, if something significantly change, we would then have to relook it. But for now, we don't see anything in the horizon that would make us change our policy. So we're still comfortable with the progressive dividend policy, and also being able to do a certain amount of share buybacks.
Just looking at MTN in about 5 years' time, what is the picture going to look like in terms of where we're going to get the bulk of the revenue coming from? Africa, geographical locations, and yes, we know we are moving away from non-voice, or from voice now to data. So just give us a picture of the investment case for MTN in 5 years.
Look, I think a key issue is that there will definitely be growth in terms of data revenue and also the services that drive data. We've made a conscious decision to make sure that we just do not get revenues from data only, but we also get revenues from the services, and hence our investments in Africa Internet Holdings and Middle East Internet Holdings, which is basically an e-commerce platform. But we see ourselves also being able to generate revenues from the entertainment and media fields, again based on services that are driven by the internet.
Mobile money is something that you've been very involved in of late. Tell us about that strategy, and how is this going to compete with the likes of Kenya's M-Pesa, for example?
Well, mobile money has been quite successful. I think in our East Africa operation of Uganda, it's probably our most advanced and the biggest mobile money business. We are rolling it out in West Africa, and last year we had some very good successes in Cameroon and in Ghana and in Ivory Coast. Although it's still quite early, we're seeing very good signs of good progress. So mobile money is going to be an important part of what we deliver to our customers. And we think that going forward, mobile money and other services should contribute about 20% of our revenues in the next 5 years or so.
Has it taken off in South Africa?
In South Africa, it hasn't taken off that well, and I think there's a number of significant differences in that. South Africa's probably got a well-developed banking infrastructure already, financial services infrastructure. So it's a question of finding the right segments for whom these services will work well.
So the bulk of this 20% will be outside of South African borders?
Not necessarily, across the board.
Across the board.
And there it's not just mobile money on its own, it's mobile money plus the other services that we spoke about earlier on.